Hello and good morning everyone. My name is May Ramus and today we are going to delve into the topic of religion and sex. Sex is a biological need encoded within us, and religion, since the dawn of humanity, has provided a guide and answer to questions we may have. Many of us here practice some sort of religion. I myself have been raised Roman Catholic, and even then it was preached since I was young that celibacy was the only true way, except when you're married, that is when you can engage in sex. However, even then, I did have some questions, which has led me to do this research. Thus today, we will be exploring the religions Greek mythology, Taoism, Hinduism, Christianity, and Islam, and what they say about sex. To begin with is in Greek mythology. Greek mythology did not have anything. They saw sex and religion as something that was not particularly intertwined with one another, though they did use sex in ritual, especially to celebrate and praise gods. An example of this was when they engaged in ritualistic sex during visits to the temple of Aphrodite, which is the goddess of love. In Greek culture, there is a difference between men and women. However, both could engage in homosexual relationships. It was more publicly known for men to engage in so as they practice pedestry. And pedestry is in which an older man would kidnap a younger boy with the consent of his father and his friends, knowing that he was about to get kidnapped. And these two individuals would then have a celebration, a feast and a hunting in the countryside, in which it was assumed and known that both of them would eventually engage in a relationship. Now, this practice mirrored that of Zeus and Ganymede. Ganymede was a young boy who was dubbed the most beautiful at the time, and Zeus kidnapped him, took him to Olympus to become his cupbearer. So this practice of pedestry mirrors both ritual and religion as well as societal practice. In comparison, women had homosexual partnerships but was not as publicly known as men, since they were under the dominion of their fathers and their husbands. Many young girls had arranged marriages to older men. In Asia, we have Taoism. Taoism is a gender-neutral religion that focused on how both men and women must attain pleasure. It is seen as a school of enlightenment, and Taoism is all about yin and yang. Both men and women are complementary to each other, necessary and equal. In Taoism, they practice tantra, which is prolonged sex. They believe that sex is a form of energy that could be used as a way of enlightening yourself, of reaching enlightenment. And through the practice of Tantra, it is the preservation of Jing, or bodily fluids. So when you engage in this, it is prolonged for a very prolonged period of time. And due to this, both men and women are seen to be equal, since both sides must achieve the peak of pleasure and no one has dominion over the other. In contrast to Taoism, is Hinduism, which placed an emphasis in sex. Much like Taoism, Hinduism has the idea that there is sex, there is energy in sex. They also practice tantric sex. They believe that pleasure is a legitimate form of eroticism, and this can be seen and reflected on the Kama Sutra, which is a collection of sexuality and eroticism aimed for the enlightenment of the individual. However, in Hindu society, it is textually and socially recognized that women are much more subservient and inferior to men. And due to this, a lot of Hindus do practice arranged marriages. There is also a homosexual god, and it is a subgroup under Hijra, which is a goddess, a transgender goddess. And even though it is widely known that homosexuality is often frowned upon, there are subgroups that do praise and celebrate this goddess. In contrast to Hinduism is Catholicism, or the Catholic Church, or Christianity. Christianity emphasizes that sex is sacred and one should remain celibate before marriage. Piety is stressed for both men and women alike, especially for women. Sex is seen as a union between man and woman and no one else. And in the Bible and in society as well, women are seen to be subservient and inferior to men, which is better explained by this quote from Ephesians, which states that women submit to your husband as Christ submitted to the church, while men love your women as Christ loved the church. Celibacy in Christianity is also widely practiced, and it is seen as sex is seen as a diversion from devotion. A true devotee has no need for carnal desires. His whole and entire existence is with God, and he has completely separated himself from the mortal realm. Much similar to Christianity is Islam. Islam also stresses on modesty, chastity, especially indecency. This religion emphasizes that intimacy is seen as a private interaction between man and wife, and publicly, much of Islamic people don't even discuss sex. It is a very taboo topic for them, and even within families, when their child asks, "Mom, what is this? What is that?" they often refrain from that conversation simply because it's such a controversial topic for them to talk about. In Islam, however, men has dominion over their wives, and women are subservient, much like the other religions we have explored. However, in Islam, a man can have up to 4 wives, and a woman cannot. Women are also very stressed to be decent. That's why you can observe a lot of Islamic women sporting a burqa, a hijab, or a niqab. And the difference between that is a burqa she is fully covered from head to toe, and you don't even see her eyes. There are slits in her clothing in which allows her to see through and be able to navigate, while a niqab allows her there's a slit in the eyes, but everything else is covered, and a hijab allows you to see her face. And this is to stress decency and modesty, and the level of belief the woman has almost equates to what she wears, whether she decides a burqa, a niqab, or a hijab. And this is only to reflect how in the Quran decency and modesty is stressed, and women believe that what they have underneath their clothing is not something to be shown around or showcased or paraded. It is something that she herself chooses to reveal to her husband. And as I researched, I found that there are trends in the religions that we have covered. But first, I must emphasize that there is a difference in what is actually in religious text and how a culture developed. Men and women are considered to be complementary to one another in all of these religions, though textually and socially, women have been written to be inferior to men. And this has, of course, leaked into how this culture develops and how women are much more subservient to men and how they are treated much, much more differently, as they have been seen and recorded in religious text to be inferior. Sex is also seen as a religious and sacred act. It is not just something that temporarily fills you when you're with lust. It's something that is a union between man and women. And before I end my presentation, no matter what your religious beliefs are, I must stress that consent is always the main factor. Thank you.